It's 9 p.m. on September 22nd, 2022, and a group of City of London police officers are standing outside room M15 at the Travelodge Bicester, a one-star budget hotel in Oxfordshire, waiting for the right moment to kick in the door. On the other side, they believe, is the person behind two of the biggest data hacks of the year. A complicated tracing and surveillance operation has helped them zero in on a Telegram user named Alili Howarth. They go in, and the person behind the door is not Lily Howarth. It's a 17-year-old kid from Oxford named Arion Kurtaj. And what they find in that room is about to become one of the strangest cybercrime stories anyone has ever told. This video is about the biggest leak in gaming history. 90 clips of unreleased Grand Theft Auto 6 dumped on the internet from a budget hotel room by a teenager who was supposed to be offline. His laptop had already been taken. He was on police bail. He was literally under police protection. And he still pulled it off, using a hotel TV, an Amazon Fire Stick, and a phone. I've gone through the court records, the government's own cybersecurity review, and every verified detail from the trial, and I want to walk you through exactly how this happened, because the story is way stranger than the headline. And there's one detail near the end that almost nobody talks about, and it changes how you see this entire thing. Let's start where almost every other version of this story skips. Before the Travelodge, before GTA, before Lapsis was a name anyone knew, Arion Kurtaj bought a website. The site was called Doxbin. If you don't know what Doxbin is, it's essentially a forum where people post other people's private information, home addresses, phone numbers, family details, to intimidate or expose them. It's one of the darker corners of the internet, and Kurtaj bought it for a reported $75,000. He was a teenager. He had that kind of money. That alone tells you something about where he'd already been by that point. But he didn't hold on to it for long. The previous owners pushed him to sell it back, and when he did, they cut him out of their Discord community. So he did what someone in that world does when they feel disrespected. He burned it on the way out. He dumped the entire Doxbin database publicly. Usernames, passwords, email addresses, everything he'd downloaded while he owned it. And the people who ran that site responded the only way they knew how. After rival hackers doxed Kurtaj and the contact details of members of his family, he was moved to a hotel in Bicester for his safety. The Travelodge wasn't a hiding spot he chose. It was a consequence of losing an online turf war he started. There's also a detail buried in this that almost nobody mentions. When Kurtaj dumped the Doxbin database, he had apparently altered the source code to log every login attempt in plaintext, meaning the leak didn't just expose usernames. It exposed the real passwords and two-factor authentication data of hundreds of other hackers who used the site. Investigators would later call it one of the most useful de-anonymization tools they'd come across. A teenager's petty act of revenge accidentally handed law enforcement a roadmap to an entire criminal ecosystem. He was burning the house down and didn't realize he was also handing someone the fire department's master key. So now he's in that hotel. Laptop confiscated. As per his bail conditions, he was banned from using the internet, which he clearly paid no attention to. And here's where the story gets into what Lapsis actually was, because to understand the GTA hack, you need to understand how this group operated, and it's probably not what you're imagining. Lapsis is described as a loosely organized group formed mainly of teenagers, with members in the UK and Brazil, that acted between 2021 and 2022 for notoriety, financial gain, or just for fun. And the way they got into companies, Nvidia, Microsoft, Samsung, Uber, Rockstar, was not through sophisticated code. It was through conversation. Their known tactics included social engineering attacks like phishing and vishing to steal credentials, SIM swapping attacks to bypass multi-factor authentication, and bribing corrupt suppliers, employees, or business partners of targeted organizations for secure MFA tokens or stolen credentials. Here's how SIM swapping works, because it's important. SIM swapping works through social engineering rather than technical exploitation. Criminals research their targets using social media, data breaches, and public records to gather personal information, then call the victim's mobile carrier, impersonate the account holder, and request that the phone number be moved to a new SIM card they control. Once attackers control the phone number, they can intercept SMS codes for password resets and two-factor authentication. So, your second layer of security, the thing that's supposed to protect you even if your password leaks, just got handed to someone who made a convincing phone call to your carrier. And then there's MFA bombing, which is even simpler. After compromising a password, attackers attempt to log in, which sends an MFA prompt to the legitimate user's device. They rely on the user either mistaking it for a genuine prompt and accepting it, or becoming frustrated with continuous prompts and accepting one just to stop the notifications. This technique, known as MFA prompt bombing, poses a significant threat. When they targeted Uber, they didn't just rely on user fatigue. One attacker called the victim pretending to be from Uber's IT department and convinced them to approve the MFA request. So, the actual breach was a phone call. A fake IT support guy, a tired contractor, one tap on a phone screen. That's how Uber went down. And here's the part that should make every corporate security team uncomfortable. Despite security researchers and experts decrying for years the use of SMS-based authentication as insecure, DHS Cyber Safety Review Board highlighted that most organizations were not prepared to prevent the attacks from Lapsis or other groups employing similar tactics. The U.S. government's own review board looked at what Lapsis did to some of the most well-funded companies on the planet and concluded they used primarily simple techniques, not 0 days, not nation-state malware, conversation. Among high-profile companies impacted by Lapsis dollar are Microsoft, Cisco, Okta, Nvidia, T-Mobile, Samsung, Uber, Vodafone, Ubisoft, and Globant. All of them. With phone calls and social engineering. Now, remember that detail I mentioned at the beginning? The one that changes everything? We're getting there. But first, let's get back to that hotel room. Arion Kurtaj was in police protection at a Travelodge hotel when he obtained 90 unreleased clips of GTA 6 from Rockstar Games, despite having his laptop confiscated for his involvement with the cyber gang Lapsis. The London police kept him in a Travelodge hotel in Bicester, where he used an Amazon Fire TV stick, a smartphone, a keyboard, and a mouse to hack Rockstar Games' servers. So the setup is a hotel TV being used as a monitor, a Fire Stick to get online, and a phone. That's the toolkit. No custom rig. No server farm. A $40 dongle, and a device that most people use to watch Netflix. The way into Rockstar followed the same playbook. After failing to log in with the credentials of a former employee, they used an account linked to a contractor. Once inside, credentials of another former employee were used to access a part of the system associated with game development. It was social engineering again, masquerading as an employee who'd lost access, working through Rockstar's internal systems until he found a door that opened. The day after gaining access, Kurtaj downloaded a series of videos and design documents for the GTA sequel, as well as source code, all highly confidential, before leaking some of it. He accessed the internal Slack messaging system of Rockstar Games in order to attempt to blackmail the developer. He posted a message on their own internal Slack, telling Rockstar to contact him on Telegram within 24 hours, or he'd start releasing source code. He wasn't hiding. He wanted them to know it was him. He posted the clips publicly on a GTA forum under the alias TeepoTuber Hacker, the same teapot handle that linked the Rockstar breach back to the Uber hack he'd done days earlier. The alias was practically a signature. He was more interested in the credit than the concealment. Rockstar Games responded by publishing the trailer for the highly anticipated game ahead of schedule. It became the quickest video in YouTube's history to reach 100 million views. So, in a strange, chaotic way, the biggest gaming leak in history accidentally accelerated one of the most watched video drops ever recorded. And then the police came through the door of room M15. Now, here's what I said I'd come back to: the detail that reframes this whole story. The trial at Southwark Crown Court ran for 6 weeks. Kurtaj, who has autism, was assessed by psychiatrists as not fit to stand trial. So the jury was asked to find whether he had committed the acts rather than deliver a verdict of guilty. That's a meaningful distinction. The jury wasn't deciding intent. They weren't deciding whether he understood what he was doing or whether he meant harm. They were only deciding, did he do it? And they found that he did, on 12 offenses. Judge Patricia Lees said that Kurtaj remained determined to commit further serious offenses if the opportunity arose, and sentenced him to indefinite detention, not a fixed prison sentence, an indefinite hospital order, indefinite detention in hospital for hacking Uber and fintech firm Revolut, and for blackmailing Rockstar games. He stays until mental health professionals decide he's no longer a risk. And the mental health assessment found that he continued to express the intent to return to cybercrime as soon as he possibly could. That's the detail. Not the fire stick, not the hotel room. The fact that after everything, the arrest, the bail, the confiscated laptop, the trial, the indefinite sentence, his stated position was still, I want to go back to it. And that tells you something real about the profile of people who end up here. Investigators found evidence suggesting Kurtaj had been involved in online attacks since he was around 11 years old. The FBI has noted that the average age of someone arrested for a general crime in the U.S. is 37, while the average age of someone arrested for cybercrime is 19. These aren't hardened career criminals who spent years building up to something. They're kids who found a skill set online, sometimes through gaming communities, sometimes through forums, and escalated faster than anyone around them noticed. Lapsis was a loosely organized group, formed mainly of teenagers, and they walked past the defenses of some of the most well-resourced companies in the world. And look, I want to be honest about something here, because it's easy to tell this story and make it feel like a movie. It's not. There are real companies that lost millions. There are real people who had their personal information exposed. Uber reported a financial loss of around $2.8 million from Kurtaj's breach alone. Rockstar had to scramble to contain a leak of their most valuable unreleased asset. And there are still companies right now running SMS-based two-factor authentication, still using help desks that can be socially engineered with a confident voice and a few scraped facts. Most organizations were not prepared to prevent these attacks, and the techniques haven't changed. If you've made it this far and you're finding this stuff as wild as I do, drop a comment with what surprised you most. Genuinely curious whether it's the Fire Stick, the Doxbin revenge arc, or the fact that the US government basically confirmed the biggest corporate hacks of 2022 were done with phone calls. And if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, there's another video right here about how social engineering has been used to break into systems that no amount of code could crack. Same energy, completely different story. Worth watching back to back. So here's where we land. A teenager in a budget hotel room, banned from the internet with no laptop, pulled off the most significant gaming leak in history. He got there because he bought a doxing site, lost a power struggle, got exposed, and ended up in protective custody, where he immediately went back online. The breach itself wasn't code. It was conversation, patience, and the fact that somewhere inside Rockstar's contractor network, there was a person who could be convinced. Despite years of warnings from security researchers, most organizations were simply not prepared for someone willing to pick up the phone and ask nicely enough. The weakest system in every company isn't the firewall. It's never been the firewall. It's the person on the other end of the line who just wants to help.